Good morning, everybody. It is, what is it, 9:30 right now on Wednesday of Consensus. Thank you all for waking up, coming out here and talking about Consensus protocols so early. I'm sure everyone had a great night last night. I did too. This is always a fantastic, fun conference because we learn about new things and we talk about some things that we haven't solved yet. Today, we're here to talk about one of those things. Casper, the Consensus protocol, has been discussed since 2014, 2015, when we're talking about how we're going to scale blockchains that are going to remain decentralized. One of the most important and impactful figures about this discussion is one Mr. Vlad Zamfir, who is with us and will be coming up in a moment to the side. So Vlad ultimately is the leading researcher at the Ethereum Foundation, and he's been tasked with trying to solve decentralization amongst proof of stake for the rest of the world. In this implementation, his implementation, Casper CBC, we're trying to build networks that ultimately are able to achieve his view of Casper CBC consensus protocol. So right now I'd like to introduce Vlad, have him come up here a little bit and talk about decentralization.
Great. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk about decentralization, specifically in proof-of-stake protocols, and kind of what it means for a protocol to be decentralized when you don't really know much about, for example, where that protocol is running exactly as a protocol designer. You know, when you're designing a protocol, you don't get to decide who has what coins, who has what hash power, but you still have to decide if you're trying to design a decentralized protocol, how to architect the system in a way that's as decentralized as possible. And it's kind of a theme in the cryptocurrency space because of security reasons that decentralization is important. We kind of have this traditional notion of decentralization in terms of what it takes to take down a system or what it takes to control it. So you have this notion of decentralization in terms of the number of doors you have to knock down to capture the system, either to capture it completely or to just shut down its operations. This is the traditional notion of decentralization. Is how many people do you have to sue? How many people do you have to lock up? Who do you have to capture in order to take over the system? And this is definitely one of a notion of decentralization. But it's in the proof-of-stake protocol, you have access to this notion via the fault tolerance thresholds. So a fault tolerance threshold will tell you how many nodes you have to capture in order to undermine the guarantees of the protocol. And so you can kind of see that protocols with lower fault tolerance thresholds are somehow more centralized because they have a smaller group of people that can capture them. But even the fault tolerance threshold alone doesn't really tell you enough of the story because in a public economic context, people have different numbers of coins. And just because a fault count assumption doesn't really mean how many people you have to capture. It's more like how much of the coins you have to capture or how much of the mining power you have to capture. So even the fault tolerance threshold isn't the best proxy in the world for how decentralized a protocol is. Although one of the cool things about CBC Casper, and I think there's a new consensus protocol called Flexible BFT that also has some of this property of not having an in-protocol fault tolerance threshold and having basically the possibility for clients to choose different fault tolerance thresholds. And this, I think, does something for decentralization in the Casper protocol. And I think we can especially see this once we start to understand decentralization from somewhat of a different point of view, not from the how many doors you have to kick down, but in terms of more of an economic analysis of the requirement for coordination. So there's a kind of notion that in a decentralized system, you shouldn't have to get permission. You shouldn't have to ask someone and make sure that you get approval from some group of stakeholders before you can behave rationally in the system. You should be able to permissionlessly come online and not have to coordinate with anyone, not have to get any permission from anyone in order to participate. And so there's this other notion of decentralization that I like, which is to do with the extent to which their coordination is not required to play rationally in the game. The extent to which you can behave completely independently of anyone else and pretend that they don't exist, no matter what cartels they've formed. And it's also related to the idea of cartel resistance, Because if your strategy doesn't change no matter what cartels other people form, or no matter what cartel you're in, there's not really much incentive to form a cartel. And the cartelization of consensus protocols and of markets, is something that we've observed and are going to continue to observe in these systems. And so the cartel resistance of a particular protocol, I think, is going to be one of the big tells of its decentralization. At the end of the day, if we have two protocols with the same fault tolerance thresholds and one of them has incentives that are more cartelizing, over time what you'll find is that the Telegram channel with all the miners in it will have more influence because they have more ability to make their own private gains from colluding within the cartel. So there's kind of coordination-free, cartel resistance, economic notion of decentralization that I think is more in line with the permissionlessness than the philosophy of counting the number of doors you have to knock down to control a system. And the extra protocol fault tolerance thresholds in Casper, in the CBC Casper family protocols, helps with this kind of stuff because it removes focal points for cartel formation around the fault tolerance thresholds. So instead of cartels naturally forming around the 1/3 fault threshold or the 1/2 fault threshold, because there is no in-protocol fault threshold, there's no natural focal point for the cartels to form. And if clients do, for some reason, all use the same fault tolerance threshold and cartel does form, clients have a natural response, which is to move their fault tolerance threshold. And so it's more of a dynamic game than the in-protocol fault tolerance threshold, which I think will lead to more cartel resistance, which is my idea of a kind of economic notion of decentralization in proof-of-stake protocols. So I don't know. I'm going to turn it over to Michael or Tim, and he'll turn it over to Michael.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
And we're going
Vlad,
to do
join us
some
on
demo.
stage here. Sit on down. So decentralization is important. We all have come to realize that, and it's important to think about the methods of how we're going to get there, not only decentralizing the protocol, but also possibly the systems underneath that are running our servers, our containers, our nodes. Why am I here? I'm Timothy Lewis. I'm one of the founders of Ikigai Asset Management. I've been involved in cryptography for the last 30 years. I'm a developer by trade, and hopefully one day I can have Byzantine. The importance of decentralization is why we're here. I've gotten to know the CasperLabs team over the last year. Many of the people I've known for several years. We need to continue to iterate on different protocols until we have better decentralization standards. Currently, some of the other blockchains that are in existence face different attacks based on the idea that they can maybe be delegated in their proof-of-stake protocol. I don't believe that ultimately in a world that we hope to live in, that is the method of control that we'll exist with. Hopefully we can have a radically decentralized proof-of-stake network that will be able to satisfy all the needs that we have in the things that we want to own for ourselves, like our identity and hopefully the communication currencies that we use in our day-to-day lives. So everyone is familiar with these ideas of the importance of decentralization. But right now when we look at a lot of the networks that we run, a lot of them are based on a lot of centralized services, whether it's AWS, Microsoft, Google Cloud. We really don't know where a lot of these things are running. And myself, I've built data centers for many years, about 20 years in the fintech space. Building data centers is interesting. There used to be a lot more mom and pop data centers. ISPs used to pop up all over the world, and we were able to kind of create these spaces that we could make sure and maintain that we had freedom of speech over the internet, and we didn't have controllers of what that was. So as we've kind of developed into this new space where we're asking for participation for people to use our networks, mostly we've just had speculators. Some of the engineers that are on, the fantastic engineers that have built many of these applications and protocols, there's a barrier for a lot of people to participate in running nodes, running these systems to help guarantee the consistency of decentralization and that everyone else is able to participate. And that's important. It's important to me. Right now, yes, it's difficult for your mom to be able to log in with her Bitcoin wallet if she has one. But it's even more difficult for her to consider running a Bitcoin node or an Ethereum node or any other nodes that we have in existence because, God, it's hard. Most people don't even know how to use a command line, and being able to have them access data centers and be able to run nodes is a difficult thing for us to ask of them. But But I believe if we're going to be radically changing how we understand decentralization, that we need more people to participate in that decentralization and be able to run the systems where they can control and participate and be a part of the networks that are guaranteeing that centralization. Network diversification is important. Right now, some of the top protocols are based mostly with services in Amazon. Many of the top 10 allow people to run wherever they want. It's simple to run services on Amazon, so everyone chooses to do that. But unfortunately, that leaves us with a large attack vector. Amazon themselves, they've had some issues before. They're pretty reliable. They're pretty cost effective. But ultimately, I, for one, do not trust our Amazon overlords. And I hope that we are able to create better pathways to understand where our decentralized systems are running so we can diversify that amongst the networks. So when I came to Casper and have been a part of trying to help advise them which directions to take and how to understand how to think about these things, getting to know Meta and getting to know Michael has been fantastic over the last year. And I proposed to them as an outsider, as someone who was there to try to build systems, that I'd like to take a grant. I would like to ask for a grant to help build out a system that I believe can help launch, more easily launch nodes for this network so we can have better participation across the entire network. So Meta so graciously accepted my proposal. And a couple of months ago, we started working on our boot platform. So this platform is called Boot Node, and it will first exist on Casper. And this will allow anyone with any provider, whether it's Amazon, Microsoft, Google, or their own, a BYO cloud, or a different array of many different data centers that we're all connected to. Having been in the industry for many years, we have a lot of great friends in the industry. One of my partners on this is WANSec. WANSec operates eight very secure, very independent data centers all across the world. And so we're creating a better way for us to be able to launch nodes, single sign-on methods, and for people like my mother to be able to log in and be able to choose a provider, log in with her provider's information, hit one button for launch. And for me, that provides what I consider and call conscious virtualization, where we can all take part in a decentralized data center world where we don't have just one provider, but we can create these cryptographic nodes that all exist, and it won't matter where they exist. So hopefully we won't have some of the other attack vectors that might be included if everyone just continues to use Amazon. So I'm going to go through really quickly a demo of what Boot Node looks like. This is kind of an early MVP stage, and right now we're using it to test it on our testnet so we can radically fire up many different nodes across the system for testing. We'll move into our DevNet. DevNet for Casper will be sometime in the summer, where we'll then have an incentivized bounty program to where we can actually tell, using this system, how the network itself is laid out, how decentralized it is. Just to go over a little bit of it, right now we have two providers up. We have both the Hanzo Cloud and we have the Google Cloud. We can see this would be as if I was a user trying to launch nodes and I was incentivized to do so. And I might have more incentive to do so on different parts of different networks or different regions than others to make sure that we have a more homogeneous view of our network worldwide. You can see we have a number of different nodes running. It tells us what network they're on, what location they're in, some information about the last blocks that they processed, and we're building in a DAG view as well, where we can actually see where it's participating in the current DAG for Casper. To launch nodes, it's pretty simple. After I've logged in, launching a node, choosing an image, deciding how many nodes I'd like to launch within the network, what provider they're going to be on, I'll choose Google. Then what regions that I need this to exist in. Let's just say I need to add some more in Asia, or I'm incentivized to do so. So after clicking launch, Google now takes a few minutes to provision them. It's about 5 to 7 minutes, but in 5 to 7 minutes, after Michael Birch is done talking about his implementation of the Casper CBC protocol, we'll see them come up, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how you can participate in this launch. So Michael, why don't you talk a little bit about...
All right. Thanks, Timothy. Hey, everyone. I'm Michael Birch, lead developer at CasperLabs. And we've got a little fun interactive demo for you all here this morning, exclusive just for you guys for being here with us.
Put that up for you.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got a fun QR code here and an easy-to-remember URL. So as Timothy was saying, we're interested in getting tons of nodes booted up all across the world. We want everyone to participate in the decentralized future. So feel free to go to that URL. You'll see a sign-up page there where you can put in your email address so that we can stay in touch with you about updates on our project. And after you've signed up, you'll see a little button there that's exclusive just for you guys here. And if you click that button, you'll actually be interacting with the first dApp on our platform. So this is a very simple dApp. It's a poll where we're asking the question, who do you think Satoshi is? We have a few options there for you. I'll show it up on the screen here in a minute. But what's actually happening in this is when you fill in this web form, on the back end, the web server is translating that into a call to the blockchain. It's actually sending a piece of code out to the blockchain, which is interacting then with all of the nodes that you just saw up scattered across the world. And it's processing that vote and sending the results based on what's on the blockchain back to you so you can see it right there on your phone, or I guess most of you are on phones right now, on your computer, whatever the case may be. It should launch, so it's sitting here thinking about what it wants to do. Yeah. What's that? So yeah, that's a great question. So the question for those in the audience, how are we doing this without a client or a wallet? Right. This is part of the dApp development process. Right. If you're going to put blockchain in the hands of the masses, you've got to make sure that they are able to do it quickly and easily. So what's actually happening on the back end here is the dApp itself has an account with a set of keys associated with it. And we're not asking for any credentials because this is an open poll, right? But you can imagine that the dApp could dynamically ask for credentials, say in the form of a key, say in the form of a login, say in the form of a biometric maybe someday. And we can store that on the chain too. Who knows? The future is full of possibilities. But the point here is that the web front end is interfacing with the blockchain backend so that it's hiding all of that complexity from you, the users, unless you choose to have it. Of course, you could actually, if you had your own account here, your own wallet on the CasperLabs blockchain, you could actually submit a vote not through the web front end. In fact, you could write your own web front end for this that interacts with the same voting dApp, and we could have this whole universe of different front ends looking at different dApps that are available on the platform and have people interact with it in the way that suits them. But that's an excellent question. Thank you. So I'll turn it back to Timothy here.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. So we'll post these results on the launch page. The idea here is that we're creating a bounty. There's going to be a bounty out to make sure that we have widespread decentralization for all of the nodes on our system. Right now, ultimately, it takes a few minutes for you to be able to sign up. We'll allow that sign-up flow for the boot process over the next couple of weeks. If you follow us on launch, the idea behind this bounty is that we'll be able to incentivize people very quickly, very easily to help us run and thoroughly test this network. Some of the most decentralized networks in existence right now have less than 10,000 nodes running on their network, and we hope to surpass that during our DevNet. So ultimately, come join us. We've put this together. Please hit launch.casperlabs.io so we can get you out information about what that is. This is brought as a part of BootNode with WANSec. We here at CasperLabs thank you. We all would like you to participate. Please come join us in this decentralized revolution and take a part in actual consensus and being a part of running the nodes of the network that one day we all can control. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.